You know that sound that wakes up the whole neighborhood in the middle of the day? I remember it like it was yesterday. A thick, dry, metallic bang like a firecracker going off in suburbia. Birds scattering, a dog howling 3 houses down, old Mr. Murphy dropping his shears. That was my Grandpa Jack, slamming the garage door as if he were sealing the fate of some HOA queen, Karen Delaney, the high-heeled, clipboard-wielding tyrant who ran the Homeowners Association like it was her private fiefdom. I say fiefdom on purpose because that morning the door slam wasn't just a door slam. Grandpa locked the garage tight, and inside were 2 huge commercial trucks, HOA trucks, according to Karen, and he did it like he was declaring war. If you want the ridiculous part, it began with muffins. Blueberry muffins, store-bought and bone-dry, left on our doorstep with a sticky note friendly reminder your trash cans were left out. I'll be using your garage this week for HOA equipment storage under Temporary Ordinance 42B. Thanks. Who leaves muffins when they're staking claim to territory? Most folks would call that weird, maybe illegal. Grandpa called it an invasion. She's going to annex the yard next, then declare your bedroom a community conference room, he said, chewing a toothpick like it owed him money. We laughed, thought Karen was being dramatic until the trucks showed up. 2 of them, one black, one gray, rolling into the driveway like they'd driven straight out of an action movie ad with only a tiny HOA logo near the wheel, and Karen waving from her Lexus with that clipboard smile that makes you want to curse fluorescent ink. The drivers opened our garage and parked like it was the most normal Tuesday ever. Grandpa didn't speak for a long beat long for him. Then he said 5 words I'll never forget. "Get me the padlocks, boy." Now you'd think I'd stop him, call the cops, talk some sense into him. But when a man who once disarmed a live grenade with duct tape and a fishing lure asks you for padlocks, you hand them over. I handed them like a robot with too much training. Grandpa locked the doors, slid a metal bar across, wrapped a chain through the handles, triple knotted. It zip-tied the ends like he was sealing a crime scene. He stood back, wiped his hands, and said, "Let's see her temporary ordinance override that." 20 minutes later, Karen came back smiling like paper and nails, clutching paperwork and smelling of toner. "Jack," she said, syrupy, "those trucks are HOA property, you can't." Before she could finish, Grandpa was on the phone. Sheriff got some unauthorized vehicles on private property. Might be a hostile acquisition. Or domestic terrorism. Hard to say these days. Karen's smile cracked like old paint. Pine Needle Estates isn't exactly a hotspot for police calls. The worst recent drama was Mrs. Trennan's poodle getting into the wine stash and attacking the mayor's leg at the 4th of July cookout. So when Sheriff Dale pulled into the cul-de-sac, people spilled out like it was a parade. He looked at the trucks at Karen, then at Grandpa with his arms folded and said, "Looks like I walked into another neighbor feud." Karen marched up brandishing a stack of printed rules. "These are HOA regulations, section 12.4C, Grandpa cut her off. "They ain't equipment, they're trucks. My garage ain't a depot." Sheriff raised an eyebrow, shrugged toward me, and basically said, "Unless you have written permission, you don't get to store stuff in someone else's garage." Karen sputtered. "But I'm the HOA president. I issued the ordinance." Grandpa tapped the chain. The trucks were stuck. Karen was furious. Sheriff left with a civility warning, but civility had left the neighborhood long ago. That night, Karen tried to cut the chain. I heard her whispering outside like some cartoon villain, but Grandpa set the motion sprinklers. She got blasted so hard she slipped into a puddle and screamed, "Raccoons fled." By morning, gossip exploded. Mrs. Pine from across the street baked us a cake that said, "Team Grandpa." Someone printed t-shirts, and Karen wasn't just mad. She was planning payback. The thing was, when Grandpa and I peeked into one of those trucks, we didn't find folding chairs or banners. We found surveillance gear monitors, cameras, labeled folders with names and neighborhood notes. Grandpa said the second line, "I'll never forget, son. This ain't just a lawn queen power trip. This is something big. Maybe federal." So that's how we went from an HOA stink fight to locking down mystery trucks and uncovering possibly the biggest suburban scandal our town had ever seen, all because Karen couldn't keep her nose out of our garage. The morning after the great garage lockdown, Pine Needle felt less like suburbia and more like a slow-burn spy drama. Neighbors peeked from behind blinds, walking dogs extra slow, as if hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous locked trucks or Grandpa's jury-rigged traps. Karen, of course, didn't take defeat quietly. She returned at 9:02 a.m., aggressively coiffed in a pink pantsuit like she was leading a parade, slipped an envelope into our mailbox and marched off. It was an HOA summons emergency board meeting accusing us of obstructing community resources. Grandpa read it, laughed for 30 seconds, then used it to scoop a particularly defiant squirrel turd off the bird feeder. "We're going," he said, "but we're not going quietly." Meanwhile, the truck sat quiet, but those folders burned in my head. Surveillance gear, names, logs. Why would an HOA have that? Grandpa had theories he always did. One involved a secret HOA cult robes made of lawn care uniforms. Another said Karen was in some government HOA training program like the CIA, but with hedge clippers. I thought he was joking until I found him late that afternoon sketching a timeline on the back of a pizza box magnet pinned to the wall with a smiling taco magnet. The emergency board meeting felt like walking into a trap. The clubhouse was packed, folding chairs arranged like an inquisition. Karen stood before a banner, "Community First, Preserving Order." She smiled that cold smile. "We're here to discuss urgent community matters. Jack Madison has unlawfully detained HOA property." Grandpa leaned back, sunglasses on indoors, and said, "Operational integrity. Karen, you parked 2 mystery trucks in my garage without permission. You're lucky I didn't strip them for parts." Gasps. Karen produced a wad of papers like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Ordinance 42B subsection E. Grandpa didn't even look. "That ordinance was voted down in 2011, he said. Karen blinked, stammered, "I vetoed it myself. I was there." The room murmured. Her grip on the narrative started to loosen. She went nuclear. "Release the trucks in 48 hours or face fines, service removal of privileges," she declared. Grandpa smiled and pulled out the photos we'd taken from the truck rows of cameras, microphones, folders, tagged with names like Sanchez fence violation, Mills cat issue. "These trucks are loaded with surveillance gear. I counted folders with personal data on people in this very room," he said. The room erupted. People asked, "Is this how she knew about my gnome collection? Is this why she fined me for a weed that wasn't there?" Karen insisted the info came from voluntary reports and visual inspections. Grandpa asked, "Anyone here voluntarily report on their neighbors?" Dead silence. Karen gathered her papers, stormed out, yelling about slander and lawsuits. By the time we got home, the front yard had become mission control for a suburban uprising. Someone spray-painted Spy Queen in pink chalk with a crooked crown. A neighbor we barely knew left a casserole anonymously with a wink, and the pizza guy handed Grandpa a free large for the man who finally stood up to her. We laughed, but we also felt watched. Grandpa turned the living room into Command Center Alpha. He laid out photos from the truck across the coffee table and started matching names to the HOA member list he'd apparently kept since 1999, alphabetized, color-coded, which I always thought was hoarding. The photos revealed stuff hidden in plain sight: birdhouses with lenses in the perch garden, frogs with tiny antennas, sprinkler heads with pinholes. Grandpa muttered, "She had this set up right under their noses. This goes deeper than a few snitch fines." I asked why she'd bother spying on neighbors who argued about mailbox paint. He looked at me like I'd missed the whole movie. "Control," he said. "It's not managing rules, it's manufacturing leverage." He explained how Karen could weaponize knowledge. She knew habits, secrets, kids sneaking out, even who had the loudest dog at 3 a.m. One file stood out: ours. Label Madison Contingency Plan. Thin, but with one chilling line: possible risk of disruption. If activated, engage plan. I whispered, "What does that mean?" Grandpa didn't answer loud, he just stared. Angry, quiet, strong. We photographed everything. Every folder log note, locked the truck back up, sealed the garage, and left without a word. "We're not calling police yet," Grandpa said later. "If we call now, we lose control. She'll vanish before they can touch her. We need to rally the neighborhood, but not with rants. We'll give her rope enough to hang herself. Let her make a mistake." He smiled, that grin that meant we were in way over our heads, but there was no backing out. We were no longer arguing with a nosy HOA head. We were taking on a puppet master with a suburban spy ring. Our weapons: a retired veteran, a 17-year-old kid, and a growing band of neighbors with nothing left to lose. Operation Neighborhood Watchdog wasn't FBI level, but it was perfectly chaotic. We planned an irresistible public bait, a staged violation at the Kingsley's Leave trash cans curbside, 3 days blow up an inflatable flamingo in sunglasses, run a sprinkler during watering restrictions. Cardinal sins in the HOA Bible. Karen couldn't resist. We planted a tiny camera in the flamingo's sunglasses aimed at the front walk. We also needed to get into Karen's garage headquarters to grab backups and the raw logs. Grandpa assembled a crew. Mr. Dawson, a retired stage magician who swore he could pick any lock with a paperclip and gum. Nina, who'd gone viral sneaking an emotional support goose through an airport. Dee, the cat lady with 11 feral cats and a personal vendetta for fines about inappropriate meowing. While Karen's disco fundraiser thumped in the HOA clubhouse, Nina had turned it into theme night with glow sticks and fog machines. Our team slipped away. Dawson worked the lock. Nina walked the goose as lookout. The garage looked like a command post neighborhood blueprints, a wall of photos with post-its, laminated violation matrices, and a locked filing cabinet that practically screamed secrets. Dawson opened it in under 5 minutes. Inside were spreadsheets of fines that didn't match HOA financials, receipts for surveillance purchases labeled as decorative enhancements and safety improvements, and a thumb drive labeled insurance_Karen_only. Grandpa pocketed the thumb drive. Back at the party, the fog machine roared, General Honk the Goose honked on cue, and Karen took a humiliating dance-off victory, but nobody clapped. Someone had slipped a note in her purse. We know what's in the trucks. That night, Grandpa and I dug into the thumb drive in the garage. It was worse than we feared: audio of private conversations from hidden mics, personal data, birthdays, social security numbers, employment info, everything compiled and categorized. She'd built digital dossiers on half the neighborhood. But Grandpa wanted one more thing, an undeniable live catch. We planted fake intel, a forged letter, supposedly from a developer claiming Grandpa sold the house. Karen took the bait, rifled through Kingsley's mail on camera, photographed the fake letter, and the next morning slapped a formal HOA notice on my door citing structural instability and threatening bylaws nonsense. We had her doing illegal things, rifling mail, acting on false private documents. Grandpa called a community meeting in the park. People brought lawn chairs, lemonade, righteous anger. Julia, Karen's former assistant, stepped forward with a folder. I helped her back up things. I kept them. She handed over evidence. Karen went silent, collected her papers, and walked away. The silence was the sound of a kingdom collapsing. Sheriff took the thumb drive and the files. It wasn't just a neighborhood win, it was the downfall of an empire. Grandpa whispered, "Now comes the cleanup. Let's see what happens when you take the queen off the board." The next morning, Pine Needle Estates felt different, like a fog lifting. Kids played louder. People waved without looking over their shoulders. Someone even left recycling out on the wrong day, like a small act of joy. But cleanup takes time. Karen didn't go quietly into oblivion. Her house turned into a bunker, curtains closed, no car, no gnome, just silence. Grandpa, who'd been practically vibrating with purpose, said the neighborhood needed structure, but the right kind. Not rules handed down by a single person, but rules crafted by everyone. Thus, the neighborhood tribunal idea was born. It sounded silly at first, but people wanted closure. Grandpa was offered the leadership role and refused. He wanted to be the guy behind the scenes. Mrs. Delaney from Lot 19, unrelated to Karen, was voted in as the fair, sharp moderator. The tribunal was held in the park where Karen's rule had crumbled. Folding chairs in a circle, a podium of milk crates, snack tables, DJ music that occasionally played Eye of the Tiger at odd moments. But there was something healing about the crowd coming together. Karen was summoned by scooter-riding kids wearing sashes. She slammed the door, but on the appointed day, she showed up dressed in villain black sunglasses, a binder, and a look like she owned the room. Mrs. Delaney opened the proceedings, presented the public record, the files, Julia's testimony. Karen offered the same justification: I was protecting the neighborhood. Order requires rules. If I had to stretch them, so be it. Nobody bought it. Grandpa didn't speak initially, but when he did as a witness, not a defendant, he said, "This neighborhood doesn't need tyrants. It needs gardeners. People who help things grow, not cut them down because they don't fit a rule book." The vote was quick and decisive. Karen was removed from HOA duties, banned from future positions, ordered to hand over records and funds. It wasn't a legal court, but in Pine Needle Estates, community consensus carries weight. Karen left without a word, small where she'd once seemed huge. Then the surprised two men in dark suits, federal agents, drove in. They asked for Karen, read her rights, and walked her away. The evidence showed her surveillance had been sold to real estate agencies, insurance companies, even political campaigns. What started as HOA misconduct became federal privacy violations. The neighborhood watched, stunned and vindicated. Afterwards, Grandpa reluctantly accepted a temporary advisory role. They rewrote the HOA rules with real input, including a sanity clause, no surveillance, no anonymous notes, and no fines over inflatable decor. Grandpa declined a permanent title but became advisor emeritus, which mainly meant he got first dibs on cinnamon rolls at meetings and veto power over anything that smelled like tyranny. One day, while cleaning the now-cleared garage, we found a metal lunchbox wedged behind the water heater. Inside was a single cassette labeled for when it's over. Grandpa popped it into an old player. Karen's voice crackled through reading grievances like a last will. "You'll miss me. One day this neighborhood will fall apart without someone keeping order." We laughed until we had to sit down. Grandpa rewound the tape, listened again, tossed it in the trash, and said, "She's wrong. We don't need someone keeping us in line. We need to know we can count on each other." He was right. A community's strength doesn't come from rules or fines. It comes from the man next door fixing your fence, the lady across feeding your cat when you're away from neighbors who'd lock a garage together and call the sheriff if needed. Pine Needle Estates survived the Karen era and came out messier, louder, and happier gnomes, wind chimes, geese, disco balls, and one smug old man who proved sometimes the best way to protect a neighborhood is to trust the people in it. Even if it takes a net launcher hidden in a lawn gnome to remind everyone how strong a community can be. So now I ask you, when power is dressed up as bylaws and clipboards, who will protect justice in your small corner of the world? Have you ever seen someone use private information to manipulate others? Tell me, share the time you stood up with your neighbors, locked a garage door, and said, "No, we won't let this happen."